I was the Langston heir until the will exposed the truth. They threw me out like trash. Now the uncle who raised me wants me in his bed. And the worst part? I can't tell if I want to run or let him ruin me. You're not one of us. His words hit me harder than the slap that followed. I stumbled backward, my cheek burning, the sound still ringing in my ears. Across the drawing room, Aunt Miriam stood red-faced, one trembling hand raised midair like she couldn't believe she'd actually struck me. Her diamond bracelet caught the light, cold, gleaming, expensive. You little fraud, she hissed. Living in this house, wearing our name, do you know how many years we wasted on you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth tasted like copper. My legs shook, but I stayed standing. The room was full of family, Langstons with their polished shoes and cruel mouths. And me, their dirty little mistake. The news had broken less than an hour ago. A misfiled test. A quiet scandal. The press hadn't found out yet, but the staff had. Everyone had. I wasn't Elias Langston. I wasn't anyone. And then he walked in. Noah. The youngest of the Langston siblings. My uncle, supposedly. Though he never looked at me like family. More like a storm cloud looks at a window about to shatter it for fun. He didn't say a word at first. Just looked at me. Or through me. Aunt Miriam pointed at me, still shaking. Get him out of here. He's not one of us. He's a leech. I expected Noah to agree. Instead, he crossed the room slowly like he had all the time in the world and stood in front of me. His hand brushed my jaw, 2 fingers lifting my chin as if inspecting damage. My pulse thundered. He tilted my face toward the light. Who hit you? I stared at him, confused. Why did his voice sound so calm? I asked you a question, he said again, quieter now. Too quiet. My lips parted. She did. He turned back to the room. Do it again, he said to Aunt Miriam, voice like a razor. And you'll be the one leaving. She gasped. What? Are you protecting him? He's nothing. He's not even a Langston. Noah looked at me again. Exactly. He turned back to me, brushing his thumb across my cheek. You're not my nephew. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous. And now I can finally do what I've always wanted. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Noah's words over and over, trying to convince myself I misunderstood them. Now I can finally do what I've always wanted. What did that even mean? The next morning, I woke up to silence. Not even the usual knock from the housekeeper. When I opened my door, I realized why. My room was no longer mine. Everything was gone. My clothes, my books, even the piano music I used to keep on the nightstand. Stripped clean like I was never supposed to be there in the first place. A cold note sat on the floor by the threshold. You've been moved. Guest wing, room 3. Ask no questions. And I should have been furious. I should have marched back in and demanded an explanation. But I didn't. I just followed orders. Like always, the guest room was smaller, plainer. No view of the garden. No warmth. And yet the sheets smelled like something familiar. Musk and cedarwood. Noah. Before I could even process it, the door opened behind me. I see you found your new quarters, he said. I spun around. You moved my things without asking. He walked in like he owned the air I was breathing. You don't ask questions when you're not part of the family. Then why let me stay at all? Noah closed the door. Click. Then, softly, because I'm not done with you yet. My heart stuttered. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. I backed away until my knees hit the edge of the bed. I don't understand you, I whispered. That's because you keep trying to. He was standing in front of me now, looking down at me like he was starving. His hand came up, brushing my hair out of my face. I flinched, but he didn't stop. You're not one of them, he murmured. Not anymore. That means you're not off limits. I was never. You lived under my roof. His voice was low. Dangerous. You sat at my table. Called me uncle with that soft little voice. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I tried to step away, but his hand slid down to my jaw, holding me in place. Noah. I could never touch you, he said. Not then. But now. He leaned in, close enough that his breath touched my lips. Now you're mine. My throat tightened. Is this a joke to you? You just want to humiliate me like everyone else now that I don't have their name. His expression darkened. You think this is about pity? I don't know what this is. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes fully. It's obsession. And then he walked out, leaving me breathless and burning. As the door clicked shut behind him, I collapsed onto the bed, my heart hammering and my face flushed. I had no idea what was happening. Only that for the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I was the most important thing in the room. And that scared me more than being cast out ever could. Living under Noah's roof wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a battlefield I couldn't see clearly. Every morning, I woke up unsure what to expect. Would Noah glare at me from across the room? Mock me for some imagined failure? Or worse, corner me with that fierce possessiveness that twisted my stomach into knots? "You're worthless without the Langston name," he spat one afternoon, leaning in close enough that I could feel his breath, heavy and dangerous. "You think you can just walk around like you belong here? You don't." His words stung, but the worst was the way his eyes lingered on me afterward, sharp and unblinking, like he was claiming me, marking me as his. I wanted to push him away, to tell him to stop, but I couldn't. The way he touched me was different from anyone else's. Rough, yes, but not without an underlying possessiveness I didn't understand. I kept telling myself he was just a bully. That's what uncles did when they didn't like their nephews, right? Meanwhile, Julian stayed distant but always watched. One evening, I found myself sitting across from him in the massive, cold study. His green eyes locked on me, calm but calculating. "You don't understand the game you're in," Julian said quietly, tapping a finger on the edge of a crystal glass. "Noah's been watching you since you arrived, more than you realize." "What do you mean?" I asked, swallowing the lump in my throat. Julian leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. "He's obsessed. Possessive. That's why he's harsh with you. He's marking his territory." I shook my head. "I think he just hates me. I'm a loser to him now." Julian's lips curled in a faint, knowing smile. "It's not just hate. It's possession. He never had a problem being involved with you when he thought you were Langston. Now that you're not, that control is his way of keeping you close." The weight of his words pressed down on me. I looked at my hands, small, trembling. What was I to them? A toy? A prize? Something to fight over? Julian's gaze softened. "You don't have to stay trapped. You can fight back." "But how?" I whispered, scared and unsure. Julian's eyes darkened. "By understanding the family. The inheritance. The power. You're more important than you think, Eli." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe I could have some control over this mess. But every day, Noah's fierce eyes reminded me I was still his possession, whether I wanted to be or not. Later that night, I was leaving the study, thoughts swirling, when I heard footsteps behind me. Noah. His presence was sudden and overwhelming. He caught me by the arm, pulling me back. Talking to him again? Noah's voice was low, dangerous. I looked up at him, heart pounding. "Julian was just explaining things," I said quickly, trying to pull free. Noah's grip tightened and a cold smile spread over his face, like he was daring me to cross a line. "You think you can side with him?" Noah whispered, breath hot on my ear. "You belong to me, Eli. Not him." His fingers slid from my arm to cup my jaw, thumb brushing my cheek with possessive softness that made my skin shiver. "No one else gets you," he said, voice trembling with raw emotion. "Only I can keep you safe." I wanted to pull away, to scream that I didn't want this. But his touch held me captive. And I realized it. Noah's obsession wasn't just cruel. It was dangerously real. The weight of the Langston name pressed down on me heavier than ever. After that tense encounter with Noah, I couldn't stop thinking about what Julian said, the obsession, the control, the power struggle. But I still didn't understand how deep it went. One gray, rain-soaked afternoon, Julian summoned me to the study again. The heavy wooden door closed behind me with a hollow thud that echoed in my chest. The room smelled faintly of old leather and polished wood, a cold fortress of power that made my timid heart race. Julian sat behind the massive desk, his fingers steepled as he regarded me silently for a moment. Then he slid a thick stack of papers toward me, the Langston family crest embossed on the top sheet. "Eli," he said carefully, voice low and even, "you need to understand what you're really dealing with." I swallowed hard and reached out to touch the papers. Legal documents, trust agreements, wills, inheritance contracts. The kind of things I had never imagined would concern me. What is all this?" My voice cracked. Julian leaned forward, his green eyes cold but steady. "This is your inheritance. A trust fund set up for you the moment you were born. A considerable fortune in your name." My breath hitched. I have money. "A lot," Julian confirmed. "But there's a catch." I furrowed my brows, dread curling in my stomach. "Noah is your legal guardian," he explained. "That means he controls everything, your finances, your assets, your ability to access them, until you turn 21. My chest tightened painfully, like the air was being squeezed from my lungs. "So, he decides what I get or don't get?" Julian's expression hardened. "Exactly. And he's using that control to keep you under his thumb." I looked down at my shaking hands. The trust fund that could have been my salvation was just another chain. "But why?" I whispered, voice barely audible. "Why would he do this to me?" Julian's eyes flickered. revealing a flash of something darker beneath his calm facade. Because the Langston legacy is the most valuable prize of all, and Noah wants it for himself. The truth was a cold dagger slicing through me. Noah's cruelty wasn't just emotional. It was legal, financial, a cage carefully forged around me from the day I was born. I felt tears sting the backs of my eyes. How long had this been going on, this invisible imprisonment? Julian's tone softened just a fraction. I want to help you, Eli. To fight for what's rightfully yours. I swallowed the lump in my throat and looked up into his calculating eyes, searching for something genuine beneath the steely surface. But how? I asked, feeling more lost than ever. We start by knowing the rules, Julian said firmly. Then we find where Noah's weaknesses lie. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick, leather-bound book. A family ledger filled with notes, financial records, and legal details. This, Julian said, is where the real power is. And it's where we'll find your leverage. Despite the cold, a small spark of determination kindled in me. For the first time, the fog of confusion began to lift. But Julian's expression shifted suddenly, darkening. There's something else, he said quietly, something you need to be prepared for. I leaned forward, heart pounding. Noah is dangerous, Julian warned. Not just possessive, but ruthless. He won't give up control easily or quietly. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I pictured Noah's fierce eyes, his grip that was both cruel and tender, the obsession that burned beneath every word and touch. This wasn't just a family feud. It was a war. And I was the prize. A sudden knock on the door startled us both. Noah, Julian muttered, closing the documents quickly. The door creaked open and Noah stepped inside, his eyes immediately locking onto mine. His gaze was sharp, almost predatory. You're spending too much time with him, Noah said, voice low but laced with menace. Julian met his look without flinching. Just making sure Eli understands the situation, Julian replied smoothly. Noah's eyes flickered with something unreadable before he turned to me. Don't get any ideas, he said softly, his hand brushing my arm possessively. You belong to me. His touch sent a confusing shiver through me, part fear, part something I couldn't name. As he left the room, Julian's gaze lingered on me, an unspoken warning in his eyes. This was only the beginning. Julian started being nice. It caught me off guard. He brought me hot drinks in the evenings, lavender tea or cocoa, always perfectly warm. He slipped books into my room, annotated with notes in elegant handwriting. Sometimes he'd just sit with me in the sunroom and say nothing at all, as if he knew silence was the kindest thing I could be given. Don't let Noah get into your head, he murmured once, brushing imaginary lint off my shoulder. He has a habit of turning affection into control. But it was already too late for that. Noah was in my head. And worse, in my space. He was quieter now when others were around. Cold. Distant. Like he barely acknowledged me. But when the house emptied, when the lights dimmed and servants withdrew to the shadows, he'd appear behind me in the hallway, lean close in the elevator, come into my room under the excuse of needing to check something. He never touched me again, not in a way that left bruises, but his presence invaded everything. The scent of his cologne on my pillow. His coat hanging in my closet. His phone plugged into the charger I used. A constant, unspoken reminder, you're not alone, Eli. You're never alone. The worst of it was that part of me had started to mistake it for something else. Intimacy. Need. But then I'd remember how he gripped my wrist. How he looked at me like a wolf sizing up prey. I was just a bone in the middle of a pack war. That truth came to a head at the next Langston family dinner. It was formal, gilded, absurd. Gold cutlery. Wine I couldn't pronounce. Everyone pretending to be civil while knives gleamed under the tablecloth. I was seated between Julian and Noah, of course. Noah didn't look at me the whole time. Julian did. He leaned in, voice soft, conversational. You're trying very hard to survive, Eli. But sometimes the smallest sheep gets devoured first. I flinched. The table quieted briefly, but no one called out the dig. Not when it was coated in silk. Noah's hand slipped beneath the tablecloth. I froze. Fingers pressed against my thigh, firm and deliberate. I nearly dropped my fork. I glanced sideways at him, but he was cutting into his lamb as if nothing were happening. My breath caught as his palm curled higher, squeezing. It wasn't subtle. It was a brand. I stayed frozen until the plates were cleared, wine glasses clinked, and the family began to disperse. As soon as we were alone, I turned on him. I shoved him lightly in the hallway, heart hammering. What the hell was that? Noah leaned against the marble wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Why are you humiliating me like this? My voice cracked. Do you enjoy it? Making me look like some toy. His gaze darkened. You think this is about humiliation? Yes. I snapped. You keep cornering me, touching me, playing games at dinner like I'm not even a person. Silence. Heavy. Then, Noah stepped close enough to trap me against the wall, his voice dropping to a murmur. I'm doing it because if I don't mark you, he will. The breath caught in my lungs. What? I whispered. You don't see it, he said, almost bitter. Julian's circling you like a vulture with silk feathers. He doesn't care about you. He just wants what I have. I'm not something you own. His jaw flexed. You're right. But you're mine anyway. I shoved past him, too shaken to argue, too confused to cry. In the back of my mind, I realized something terrifying. Between Julian's smiles and Noah's touch, I was never safe. It started with a note, slipped under my door in careful handwriting. It read, "Come with me today. I want to show you something that isn't rotten. Julian." I stared at it like it might disappear if I blinked. He hadn't spoken to me since that night at the dinner table when he let Noah crush me under his heel. I should have ignored it. I didn't. The art gallery was small and tucked in a quiet part of the city. Clean white walls, soft amber lights, and the kind of silence that felt deliberate, not lonely. Julian stood at the entrance like a phantom from another life. Long coat, scarf tucked neatly under the collar, his dark eyes unreadable. I'd forgotten how quiet he could be, how every movement was measured, like he was always 2 thoughts ahead of you. You came, he said, a little surprised. I wanted air, I muttered. He smiled. Then breathe. We walked through the exhibits without speaking. Abstract pieces in red and silver bled across canvas like wounds. Photographs of strangers stared down at me, their stories locked behind glass. Julian paused in front of one piece, swirling, storm-colored brushstrokes bleeding into a thin red center. You remind me of this, he said. I blinked. Of that. You look like you'd shatter if someone raised their voice, he said quietly. But I've seen the sharp edges under your skin. I didn't know how to respond. He stepped closer, eyes flicking down to my hands, then back up to my face. You don't belong to them, Eli. Not to this house. Not to him. The mention of Noah scraped across my nerves. My voice cracked. I don't belong to anyone. You could, Julian said, to yourself, or to someone who sees you as more than a possession. There was weight in those words, the kind that hung between us like a dare. He reached out slowly, and this time I didn't flinch. His fingers brushed mine, warm, careful, not demanding. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like an inconvenience. I felt wanted. That feeling didn't last long. By the time I reached the top floor of the Langston estate that night, I felt a familiar tension creeping up my spine, like static in the air before a storm. Noah was waiting for me outside my bedroom, still in his coat, gloves off and clenched in one hand. He looked like he hadn't moved in hours. His eyes locked onto mine the moment I stepped into the hallway. Where were you? He asked. I swallowed. Out. His jaw flexed. With Julian. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. Couldn't. He stepped closer. I backed up instinctively until I felt the cold press of the door at my back. Noah, don't. His hand hit the door beside my head. Not hard. Just enough to trap me. Let him touch you again, he said, voice low and coiled. And I'll break his fingers. My pulse skittered. You don't get to decide who I talk to. He leaned in. His breath ghosted over my jaw. I decide who touches what's mine. You're insane, I whispered. No, he said softly, tilting my chin up with one finger. I'm just the only one who sees you. I hated how that made my stomach twist. He pressed forward, hands sliding from my jaw to the back of my neck. Possessive, grounding. His other arm curled around my waist, drawing me in. My breath caught. His lips brushed mine once, hot and brief, a warning. I turned my head. Noah, stop. He didn't. The second kiss landed with heat. Full. Intentional. He tilted his head, deepening it when I froze. His teeth grazed my lip and I gasped. My hands caught uselessly against his chest. When he pulled back, he stared at me like he was trying to burn the image into memory. You let him get close to you, he whispered, thumb wiping the corner of my mouth. But only I get to keep you. My chest heaved. Why are you doing this to me? Because he wants you, he said. And I won't let him take you. He stepped back like nothing had happened, and walked away, leaving me in the dark, lips swollen, heart pounding, and so damn afraid, because some part of me had kissed him back. It started with a creak. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I'd gotten lost trying to avoid the East Wing, where Noah usually stalked like a shadow. The Langston estate was enormous and too quiet. Old portraits watched every hallway. Doors were always locked or worse, ajar like they were waiting. But this one, the carved wooden door behind the ivy-covered arch, shouldn't have been open. I passed it a dozen times. Always locked. Today it wasn't. I hesitated, then pushed it open. The scent hit me first. Jasmine and dust. The air inside was still, heavy with memories. The garden was walled in on all sides, surrounded by old stone and overgrown hedges. Glass panes arched above, filtering sunlight like stained glass. It wasn't just a garden. It was a shrine. A single path wound through flower beds and trees, but my eyes caught on the objects scattered between the greenery. Items left intentionally, like offerings. A rusted tricycle, pair of scuffed sneakers, a photograph in a cracked frame, me maybe 6 or 7, missing a front tooth caught mid-laugh. I stepped closer. There was a faded stuffed bear tucked beneath a rosebush. A tiny music box sat on a marble bench. My music box, the one I used to hide under my pillow at night. My stomach twisted. Each item, each memory. They weren't lost. They were collected, kept. I backed away, breath quickening. What is this? Then I saw it. On the wall opposite the bench, etched into the moss-stained stone in jagged, uneven script. Eni. Mine. My heart stuttered. I turned and ran. Out the door. Down the path. Through the corridor. Stumbling over the carpet. Half blind with panic. He'd been watching me for years. Before I ever questioned who I was. Before we ever spoke. I nearly collided with someone at the stairwell, arms catching me before I hit the wall. Noah, of course. He looked wrecked, coat half-buttoned, hair a little wild, and his chest rising like he'd been searching for me. Where were you? His voice cracked. I shook my head. My throat was tight. Why do you have my things? His grip on my arms didn't loosen. I told you not to go past the arch. You made a whole shrine. I spat, voice shaking. Pictures, toys, Noah. That music box. How did you even get that? His fingers trembled on my skin. You left it when you were 10. They were going to throw it out. You kept it. I breathed. All of it. He looked like he might shatter. You don't understand. Then make me understand. I cried, trying to wrench free. Make it make sense. His hands slid from my arms to my waist, clinging like he was afraid I'd disappear. I didn't know when it started, he whispered. I just remember one day I saw you crying in the garden, and I couldn't look away. You were this quiet, fragile thing the whole family ignored, and I couldn't stop watching you. You were my uncle, I said, horrified. And now I'm not, he snapped, the words tearing out of him. You think I waited all this time because it was fun? I kept my distance because I thought you were off limits. His eyes bore into mine. But you're not blood. You're not a Langston. You never were. And he inhaled sharply. I loved you before I even knew what that meant. I felt sick. He stepped closer. You can leave, Eli. I won't stop you. I blinked. But if someone else tries to touch you, his voice dropped. I'll ruin them. My knees almost gave out. He reached up slowly, like I was made of glass, and brushed my hair back from my forehead. You belong to me. You always have. I didn't kiss him, but I didn't push him away either. The Langstons never gathered unless blood had been spilled or power was being shuffled. Today it was the latter. Julian stood at the head of the long glass table, every seat filled with Langston board members, trustees, and those thin smiling cousins who only surfaced when inheritance was on the line. A hush blanketed the room, heavy as velvet. He wasn't dressed like the family's lost stray anymore. No, today he wore navy and gray, sharp and expensive. His expression was still gentle, but his words were made of knives. "I think," he said, "we all know Noah hasn't been well for some time." A ripple moved through the table. No objections, only flickers of discomfort. The kind that came when a well-guarded family secret was dragged into the light. Julian looked directly at the chairman. "Years ago, there was an incident. A breakdown. Unreported. Unmedicated. Our legal team managed to contain it then, but with the family trust in flux, do we really want someone so unstable holding power over it?" My breath caught. Across the room, Noah sat stone still. Jaw locked. Eyes unreadable. I could feel the tension coiled in him like a live wire, but he didn't speak. Julian smiled faintly, then turned to the board. "I'm not asking you to remove him. I'm asking for oversight, stability, shared control." Whispers rose like smoke. I watched it all unfold. Julian's practiced calm. The way he handled each concern with surgical precision.
No hesitación. No cracks.
The Julian who'd smiled at me in the gallery, who'd touched my hand like it meant something, that person was gone. Or maybe he never existed. This was the real Julian. Composed, cunning, and terrifyingly good at pretending to care. I found Noah in the south wing an hour later. He was by the window, one hand braced against the glass, breathing like he was trying not to explode. I barely opened my mouth before he turned. "No more meetings," he said. "No more wandering. You stay in this wing. If you need anything, you tell me." I blinked. "Are you serious?" "Deadly." He took a step forward. Then another. And when I backed up, he followed, slow, deliberate. "You saw him today. That's what he's always been. Everything he's done since he arrived, it's about power, Eli. Control. You're not safe around him." "Then I'll stay away," I said. "But you can't lock me up." He tilted his head. "Watch me." I turned to leave, and his arm snapped out, hand slamming the door shut beside my head. I froze. "You think he cares about you?" His voice was quiet now, dangerous. "You're leverage to him. But to me, you're everything." My throat tightened. "You don't own me." "I do," he said, mouth inches from my ear. "I own the way you breathe when I touch you. The way you looked at me in the garden." I hated that he was right. "I don't want this," I said weakly. "Lie better," he whispered, brushing his nose against my temple. "Or don't lie at all." He didn't kiss me, but the way he looked at me, as if I were the one holding him together, it felt far more dangerous than any touch. I found Julian in the conservatory, fingers trailing over the keys of an untouched piano. A quiet song hummed under his breath. One of those tragic classical pieces you couldn't name, only feel in your bones. He looked up when I entered, that soft, sorrowful smile curling on his lips. "Eli," he said, like I was a memory he'd been waiting for. I didn't sit. I stayed by the door, uncertain. "You wanted to talk?" He stood, dusted imaginary lint from his sleeve, and nodded. "I hate that it's come to this, that he's—" his smile faltered. "That Noah's gotten worse." I didn't respond. He took a step closer. "You're trapped here. You know that, don't you?" The words cut deeper than I expected. "I'm trying to protect you," he continued, "before he does something neither of you can walk back from." "So what?" I asked slowly. "You want me to run away with you?" He chuckled softly. "Nothing so dramatic. Just say the right words at the next board hearing. Leak something small. A whisper about his mental state, his temper. I'll handle the rest." I stared at him. "You want me to help you destroy him?" Julian didn't deny it. "If you do, you walk away clean. New identity, money, distance. A real life, Eli. Something Noah can never give you." For a second, I wavered. Sounded too easy. Too safe. He reached for me, fingers brushing my wrist. Gentle, careful. "Think about it," he said, voice like velvet. "You were never meant to be part of this world. Let me help you out of it." I nodded slowly. "I just need some air." I didn't mean to linger outside the library. I didn't mean to overhear, but I stopped when I heard my name. Julian's voice, low, amused, drifted through the cracked door. I'm not worried. He's desperate enough to say yes. Honestly, it's pathetic. Noah's treating him like some caged pet, and the idiot still hasn't figured it out. A quiet laugh from someone else. Then Julian again. He was never meant to inherit. He's just a stray, a tool. Noah's just trying to keep his favorite toy. My chest ached. My legs wouldn't move. I wasn't a person to them. Not really. To Julian, I was a bargaining chip. Pet. An accident with a use-by date. And Noah. God. Noah was twisted. Possessive. Obsessive in ways that made my skin crawl and burn all at once. But when he looked at me, it wasn't cold. It wasn't calculated. It was hunger. But it was real. He wanted me, not leverage. Not a title. Me. And I didn't know what that meant anymore. Only that it felt different. Only that it scared me in a way Julian never could. I found him in the greenhouse again. The scent of crushed mint and soil clung to the humid air, wrapping around me as I stepped inside. The late sun filtered through the glass ceiling, staining his shirt in gold and shadow. Noah didn't turn when I entered, but I knew he heard me. I stopped just behind him, heart pounding so hard I swore it echoed against the glass panes. What do you want from me? I asked. His shoulders went still. I hated how small my voice sounded. How needy. But I couldn't take it anymore. Not the games, not the silence. Not the fact that I couldn't sleep without dreaming of his breath on my skin. He turned slowly. His eyes were dark and unreadable, but there was something like pain behind them, like hunger he'd kept locked up too long. You really want to know? He asked softly. Yes. He stepped closer, and closer, until I was looking up at him and my back hit the wooden table behind me. I want everything, he said. I want your skin under my hands, your voice in my ear. I want to own every breath you take. My throat tightened. I want you in my bed, he said. In my house under my name. He leaned in, voice rasping now. I want the whole world to know you're mine, so that when they look at you, they understand they'll never get close. The silence stretched. You're sick, I whispered. I was always going to want you, he said. Even when you were my nephew. My body went cold. His eyes searched mine, almost apologetic. I fought it, Eli, but it never went away. When you were 17, you used to sleep on the couch in the library. I'd stand in the doorway, watching you breathe. He let out a shaky breath. You had this tiny gap in your shirt collar, just enough to see your collarbone. I used to imagine brushing my knuckles there, pressing my mouth there, just once. My skin prickled. He wasn't done. You had this habit, rolling onto your stomach, one leg hiked up, shirt bunched halfway up your back. God, it drove me mad. I'd lie awake for hours, fists clenched, pretending I wasn't exactly the kind of man the Langstons warned each other about. He looked down at me, full of twisted tenderness. I didn't care if it was wrong. I only cared that it was you. And I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I'd been carved into his soul. Maybe it was the awful, aching truth of it all, that he was the only one who wanted me, not my name, not my bloodline, not the scraps of legacy I barely understood. I kissed him, hard, like I hated him, like I needed him. His hands crushed into my waist, mouth rough and bruising, like he'd been starving for this. And I let him. I wanted to feel what it was like, to be desired so completely it unmade me. I kissed him until I couldn't breathe. Then I pushed away, panting, dizzy, terrified of what I'd just let happen. And I ran. The heavy doors to the boardroom slammed shut behind me. The air inside was thick with anticipation, voices low and edged with suspicion. I stepped inside, every eye snapping toward me like I just walked into a battlefield. Julian stood confidently at the head of the polished mahogany table. His sharp suit and perfect smile couldn't hide the cold calculation in his eyes. He was poised to claim victory. We're here to discuss the leadership of the Langston estate, Julian said smoothly, folding his hands in front of him. There have been concerns about Noah's past mental health incidents and his current decisions. I propose we remove him from all executive roles. A murmur of agreement rippled around the room. Noah sat far across from me, his face pale but unreadable. His hands clenched tightly on the table, knuckles white. I could see the tension coiling in his jaw, the way his fingers twitched like a storm waiting to break. My pulse hammered. This was the moment. I couldn't let Julian win, not after everything. I cleared my throat, voice shaking but firm as I stood. If I may. Heads turned. Julian's smile faltered. I walked forward, pulling out the folder I'd secretly gathered over weeks. Documents, emails, recorded conversations. I have evidence, I said, that Julian has been blackmailing members of the board and spreading false rumors to isolate Noah. A hush fell. I began to lay it out piece by piece. A text threatening a trustee's family, emails with forged signatures, financial reports manipulated to look suspicious. Julian's face darkened, his composure cracking. Lies, he spat. No, I said, voice growing stronger. The truth. Board members exchanged glances, whispers bubbling. Suddenly, Julian lunged forward, knocking the papers from my hands in a flash of anger. Enough, he growled. Noah rose from his seat, his presence suddenly immense. You've been playing a dangerous game, Julian, he said, voice low and deadly. Julian sneered. And you're weak, too broken to hold power. Noah took a step closer, eyes blazing. I'm done hiding. The room fell silent, breaths held. One trustee stood. Given this new information, I move that Julian Langston be removed from all positions immediately. The motion passed unanimously. Julian's face twisted in fury. Security was called. He was escorted out, yelling curses, but the power had shifted. Noah turned to me, eyes glossy with something I hadn't seen before. Relief? Vulnerability? Later, in the dimly lit hallway, away from prying eyes, Noah pulled me into a corner. His breath was ragged. His hands trembled as they reached for me. Eli, his voice cracked. I don't want to be this man anymore, the man they all expect me to be. I looked up at him, feeling the weight of his confession. He swallowed hard. If I have to step down from everything, the estate, the company, all of it, I will. His lips quivered. Just don't leave me. Suddenly, tears spilled over, glistening on his cheeks. He sank to his knees, gripping my hands like a lifeline. Please, stay with me. Stay here. Don't let me lose you. My own throat tightened. The image of this fierce, obsessive man broken before me shook something loose inside. I dropped to my knees too, cradling his face. Never, I whispered. Noah's hands trembled as he pulled me closer, forehead resting against mine. For a long moment, there was nothing but us. Two broken souls clinging to each other in the ruins of a family war. Noah's POV. I remember the first time I saw Eli, small, timid, and lost in a world that wasn't built for him. The way he flinched at my voice, how his eyes darted around, always on the lookout, never settling. He was so fragile, so unaware of the storm brewing around him, and yet, I saw something no one else did, something worth protecting. Back then, I told myself it was enough to just watch him from afar, to keep him safe under the shadow of the Langston name, even if it meant pushing him away, humiliating him sometimes, because I thought I was saving him from a world that would chew him up. But the truth was darker, more desperate. I fell in love with him, not despite our twisted family ties, but tangled in them. I fantasized, embarrassingly, perhaps, about touching him in secret, about a life where he wasn't just the boy I was supposed to guard, but the one I could claim for myself. Every glance, every accidental touch burned with a silent hunger I refused to name. And then, when the truth came out, that he wasn't my blood at all, it shattered the last chains of restraint I had. Suddenly, I could be honest, open, without shame or fear. I pursued him like a man starving for air, and I wouldn't stop until he was mine. Now, here, in the quiet of this room, The years of tension and longing finally melted away. Eli's skin beneath my hands was a promise. The proof that what I'd wanted all along wasn't a fantasy, but our reality. He moved beneath me, his body curved like it belonged to me, because it did. Our breaths mingled, slow and ragged, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. I kissed the nape of his neck, tasting the salt of his skin, the heat of his pulse racing beneath my lips. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I let myself drown in the moment. The only one that mattered. There were no demands, no walls, just us,